Hey, everybody. This week, I want to talk about ham radio. But before we get to that, let's wrap up a couple of projects. So, last week, I talked about how I was going to finish off the outdoor actuator configuration. The actuator cables that came with the long one, the big, long desk lifting type, were relatively short. They were short in part because I put the covers over the top of the motors to protect them a little better, which pushed the cable needed to go down and out that opening before it came through. And the other was just a very, very short Y connector to go into the main battery setup. I thought, well, that's not too bad, but it was just short enough that I couldn't hook the outdoor wires together. So I got a longer Y adapter. When I got that and it showed up, I'm like, there's probably some better way I could do this. So I thought about what if I could go get an extension cable, right? Instead of using this big long Y, what if I had the short Y and had an extension? So I went back and ordered extensions, and they take a little while to get here because it's a China-based company, and it's the only one I can find that sells these things. And it showed up, and I got them, and they're huge. They're 80 some odd inches or something. But when I looked at the configuration for the 4-panel, inside the 4-panel, the panels extend beyond the rails that I have inside. So I can take the weatherproof box that I've got, which was already, it was kind of hanging off the end of the setup, but I can now hook that in and tuck it in underneath the panel itself. And now I use one extension cord to come across. The other one goes into the box. So instead of the Y coming out of the box and being connected up outside, now the Y is, both connections are inside. And the only connection I have on the outside is the one going to the far side of the panel. So as you look at the panel underneath, you got the actuator on the left and right side. The box is sitting over the right-hand side. So the cable is real short, box is sitting right there. It's perfect for holding that in. The panels are never going to go completely flat, so the box is never going to be in the way. The one on the other side, well, I just ran that across the bottom of it from the left side one and up the right side and hook it up. It also allows me to pull the electrical cord in a different direction because I have an extension cord that comes up and runs that. So that's taken care of. Now for the double panel setup, the double panel is in the front part of the lower porch. So the 4-panel is on a pair of 4x4s rising up off the back of the new deck that I put in place, connected to the old deck. I have to put a couple of braces in there because it's the weight's pulling it a little bit forward. And these are right off the 4x12s that came up, 4x4x12, and the deck is right behind it. So for that one, because the motors are rated for this outdoor weather better than the other set that I've got, the motors are attached to the bottom as opposed to attached to the top. So the 4-panel, the motors push against the 4x4s to lift the thing up. The other one here, they're mounted to the deck, so they're pushing from the deck to push the panels up, which means that the wires for that are right there. So I went and got a weatherproof box and a device designed for running outdoor lights. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but those units that they have for running radios, for example, that have the on and off switch, and they've got the two posts there that you can attach your radio connectors up to. Those are pretty expensive. And they're not suitable for outdoor. This is actually set up to run LED lights. I got one that's a 100 watt, because each of the actuators are a 32 watt pull. And I ran those off of a single controller. Now, I've got a couple of other controllers as backup just in case. I wasn't sure if I could run it off the one or if that was going to be too much of a load for it. It seems to be working okay. And remember, I'm not pushing these up and down all the time. If it doesn't work out, I have two controllers I can put in and I can split it so that each one's running its own configuration. But having that little unit in there to run the lights, a couple of butt connectors, and better outdoor cable to connect from that box to a clear-faced box. Now, I went with a clear-faced box because in there I can see the controller. If there's power coming to it and everything's okay, there's a light on it, so it allows me to see that controller and make sure that everything is okay. Those are mounted underneath the edge of the porch. Everything fired up. Everything worked right off the rip as soon as I had it wired up, so all good on that front. Now, the ham radio part that I wanted to talk about today is kind of what I see as the future of emergency communications. Now, I don't envision there's ever going to be a time where the telecom companies are so magnanimous that they give us enough service that if there's an emergency and everybody's trying to use the cell phone at the same time, it's actually going to work. They're there for profit. They're going to make a system that's going to work with the actual number of users that it normally has on it, and maybe a little bit more. And that's about it. And anything beyond that's going to cause it to collapse. In addition to that, what kind of generators do they have, if they even have generators, that'll be able to hold up during a storm? Right? If you lose power, how long are those systems actually going to be able to continue running during that power outage? Some of them have generators, not all of them do. So there's going to be a need for communications. But as I keep seeing over and over again, and I've been doing runs with ICS 213. Now, on ICS 213, we're going a little off topic here, but an ICS 213 is a message about, could be requesting for stuff, could be giving condition reports. It can be just check-ins, right? If you have people out in the field and you've got them all checking in, you want to have a checklist of all those people so that you know that they're back safe, or you know what their status is. So there's a lot of these documents that you're going to have. But let's think about this for a minute. How long does it take you to read an ICS 213? It takes me a couple of minutes. And that's bearing in mind that you're reading it so that somebody can write it down. So I have a 213 in front of me that somebody gave me to read over the radio. It's not something I generated. Well, other than that, of these tests, those are ones that I generated. But in real world scenario, somebody's going to give you that information. Now, they're either going to give you the information and you have to put it in the proper format, or you're going to get an ICS 213 that you're reading over the radio. As you're reading it over the radio, the person on the other side, or the people on the other side, have to take the stupid thing down. So you can't read things at a rate like I'm talking to you guys right now. For most people, they can't write at that speed. So you're reading a little bit at a time to give people the opportunity to take it down. And as you can see, doing things at that speed and that pace is really going to take a while to get them out there. So I don't see emergency communications being viable if we keep to that process. And I know there's a lot of people out there who either consider CW to be real ham radio or voice to be real ham radio. But you know what? Digital is just as much ham radio. It's on our frequencies. It's things that not only are they on our frequencies, they're things that were developed by hams. The moon bounce, Earth, Moon, Earth, EME, was developed by a ham. All right, it's a very tolerant set of frequencies that you're going to bounce to the moon and come back, and you're going to have loss on the way up and loss on the way back, and it's got to be able to read that signal when it comes back. Same thing if you bounce something off a satellite. Assuming you're bouncing off a satellite and the satellite's never a recorder on it, you've got that loss on the way up and the loss on the way down. Even if it records, you've got some loss on the way up, but now you've got the transmitter, they're sending it back down, so you got a little more power coming down. But that is one way to get things done that is ham-based, but it's all digital, guys. It's not people doing voice bouncing things off the moon. It's a digital signal, something that's readable when conditions are crap. And FT8 is another system. Now, I've got a couple of really high, which I don't believe, pathways on mine. I've got a couple of 9,000-mile connections from Vermont, and I don't buy them. I think somebody put bad coordinates in for where they were, and it's defaulting to somewhere up in the Antarctic or some goofy location. So I've gone over 3,000 miles, 4,000 miles. And it's a digital mode. And when I say I've gone 4,000 miles, I've gone over 4,000 miles on 10% of my output power. It's a 100-watt transceiver. So you're talking 10 watts of power. The advantage that you get is you get all the advantages that you get with normal digital. The text just goes. It can be compressed. It has all of the error correcting that can possibly go with it to make sure that the stuff that comes up on the other end is what you intended. In addition to that, if you're thinking about things like WinLink, which in my opinion is one of the best ways to do this kind of work, it's basically like sending an email, right? You type everything into a form that actually renders in your browser. You hit send on it. It's now back in the main program that you post to the outbox, right? Just like you would with a mail program. Then you fire up the transmit. When you transmit, you have the opportunity, if you've got an internet connection, to send things out over internet. So if you, and this includes things like Starlink, right? If you have something in your house that allows you to send out over a internet connection that's non-wired, like a cell phone or a Starlink system, this will be able to send the stuff out that way. But you don't have to. There are a ton of gateways all over the country. So even if your area is having an issue, it's highly likely that you're going to find a gateway that you can send a signal to that will then put it into the main network, meaning that the person getting the mail does not have to go to that same gateway in order to get that message. And then there's some certain other advantages that you can get if you're not running as a ham operator on these frequencies, because the problem we have as ham operators is we cannot send anything that cannot be read, right? We can't encrypt something that no one else will be able to read except the receiver. It doesn't work. It's against the current laws for our licensing. So in an emergency situation, we are limited. We are transmitting things in the clear, check-ins in the clear, health and welfare stuff in the clear. That's why you'll see a lot of things are put into ways that are a little bit trickier to just listen to over the radio. For example, some radiograms will actually do things in a ARRL has a menu of phrases that are, you're going to send numbers. Why would you do that? Well, if you are doing a radiogram, that is usually verbal. And rather than reading out an entire sentence that, hey, I'm asking about Johnny. Johnny's okay, or Johnny is safe at home, or something similar to that. If you just have a number, let's say 12, then you send the 12, which is much quicker to say. And the other person then can say, okay, well, it's 12. 12 is safe at home. All right. So it's much quicker to send that. And it's not an encrypted format because it's a publicly available document. However, it is a lot, it takes a little bit more effort to realize somebody isn't home, for example, that they are someplace else. Like, I'm safe at a friend's, or I'm safe in Poultney, Vermont. It allows the thing to go a lot quicker, and it also kind of occludes it a little bit. It's not as readily accessible to a lot of people just listening to a scanner as it would be if you said the words out, right? They'd actually have to go look this thing up and know what the code was that went with it. You can do it, but it adds that one extra little level of work that has to occur for it. But putting things into a digital format, I've been playing with JS8 Call. It has a very cool high speed transmission, and that goes quickly. It's a character set base, so it's the same type of thing that a CW operator would say about how many characters they can send per minute. Here, it's sending it out in blocks of characters. So it's not sending a full sentence, but it's sending out a chunk and a chunk and a chunk and a chunk. But they, like the FT8, allows for people to share the frequency. That's the other thing that we can't do if you're talking. You've consumed that frequency for the entire time that you're reading that ICS 213. If you're the only person who needs to transmit, that's fantastic, right? If all you need to do is, let's say you're working at a cooling shelter, and for some reason it's gotten so hot that the cell towers are having issues for it, or something similar, and so you're calling in to go get water or something like that, some supplies for that shelter, that's great. If it's an emergency and you've got people asking for supplies and people doing check-ins and people getting updates on the conditions, you have to be on multiple frequencies. And even then, you're still going to start running into each other. And being on multiple frequencies means that while you're sending, while you're communicating back and forth to somebody and they're listening to you for your requests, they can't listen to anybody else for a request because they can't hear what's going on, right? They can't get a situational awareness because that's on another frequency. And unless they've got different operators for each of the different frequencies, they're not going to hear it. So that's what you get from the digital modes. So we're going to use that as an example. So you've got a request for stuff, you've got check-ins, and you've got situational awareness. So the first part of each of those three goes in one after the other. And then if there's, depending on how it's structured, that's either going to end that part or it'll send more, right? Going in a rotating basis of transmitting. But the data kind of wraps around itself. And if somebody else needs to pop in with another situational awareness or a different request for, let's say, in this case, they need a body to help out with something, that just gets added into the queue. So as everything's rotating around each other, that'll get added in and go through. So it allows for that sharing to occur. Now you can get some of that with DMR over voice, but again, it's much easier and quicker to just send it. Again, go back to the original. We're reading the text slowly to make sure it can be taken down and reported correctly. Right? And that's easy when it's words that you're familiar with, but when it's a piece of medical equipment or something similar, that can be a lot more difficult to go through, especially if you have to spell the thing out. The person on the other end now has to write that down correctly, asking for any repeats or clarifications as you go, that error correcting that the digital's doing for us. And then once you're done with that, it needs to get passed on. Now, if you don't have a clear pathway from, let's say, the incident that's going on, an incident command, then it's possible that you sent it to a relay station who had to take it down and now has to call up another station, do the same thing you just did on another station, which could be on a different frequency, and read it off so that that station either can hand it to incident or it's got to relay again. So you can think about trying to go through a state. There could be a lot of spots where it's difficult to walk the entire state from one transmitter, even on an HF frequency. So to me, the way I see the way emergency communication is going to happen is it's going to have to be digital. The shares program is going to have to be utilized more and thought of in a more planned process, because if running under shares allows for the encryption, and so that is a completely different beast. But you can send an encrypted message to a gateway that then can go encrypted off to whoever it's going to go to, who can then decrypt it. So that is hugely advantageous if you're talking about a medical situation, because even occluding the person's identity, like when you're in an ambulance, they say patient such and such, or patient is 22 years old, and they just give information about that person. It's not tied to the person. If it has to be tied to the person, it's in the clear, right? You hear these people on a scanner. So it's got to be hidden. But if you know what's going on and you can hear that, you might be able to figure out what the condition is of the patient. But by having that encrypted, you don't have to worry about that particular issue going forward. And that's why there's certain tactical radios that have the possibility of encryption. It's not allowed on our licenses. But I see going forward that we need to get more and more involved in digital communications. We need to vet those out far more than than some states do. And that we need to be prepared just in case. It's one of those things where you hope it's never something you're going to have to use. But in the meantime, it gives you a playground, a way of testing out your equipment, testing out your abilities, and seeing how well you can hit other people in your state. How far across the state can you go? Are there areas that are a dead zone? You can't do any of this stuff if you don't try it. You will never know the actual answer to that. It's one thing to look at maps and see what could be in the way of where you're going to transmit to, but that's never the entire picture, as we know. And if we can bounce a signal off a raindrop, if cloud cover can give us a little bit better reception getting over a mountain because it's skipping a little better, whatever it is that helps us out for that particular condition at that time is not going to be something you can just figure out by looking at a map and looking at the topology. That's my personal feeling of what's going to happen with emergency communications. It's going to be digital, and that just makes it easier not only to pass on the information and much quicker to pass on the information, but it allows for that retention that needs to occur, right? So even if you're relaying it, the relay station now has a copy that they can save for the after action report. The next relay station can do the same thing. If it's going through a gateway, the gateway's not going to save it for you, but you don't really need the gateway to. You just need the two ends of the reception to save it and not the gateway itself. So that's my opinion this week, and I will talk to you all next week.